Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots News Year's Mockin Eve. Get it? New Year's Rockin' Eve. Well, we're doing the News Year's Mockin Eve. We're wrapping up 2025 by mocking one last time the news. I'm Aaron Maté here with Katie Halper.
And you know what, Aaron? I didn't even realize until you said it out loud. To me, it was already such a brilliant idea to be the new year Mockin, the Mockin thing, the new Mockin year. But the news, adding news to it, news year is like, I mean, wow. I'm just so proud to be working with the mind that is Aaron Maté.
Well, it's almost like when Dick Clark came up with New Year's Rockin' Eve many years ago. It's like he was teeing it up for future satirists like us to riff on it. So thank you, Dick Clark.
Yes.
And we carry on your legacy. Now, are we going to have any musical guests like Dick Clark does and Ryan Seacrest do? No. Are we even going to look back on 2025? No, we're not.
No way. No.
Who wants to look back? Who wants to look back?
And also, we have so many musical references that it wouldn't be fair to the musicians who joined because they wouldn't be able to participate or reach the musical heights that we have just by singing along to some songs and covering them. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. Yeah, so we're just being thoughtful. But what we are going to do is just, especially because we've been off because of the holidays, we're going to just do what we always do, which is make fun of some of the wackiest clips out there and the people who are involved.
The whack people.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just let's talk for a bit about 2025. Trump returned to office. You know, was there some satisfaction in me of seeing the Biden people kicked out after how awful they were in, namely, supporting the Gaza genocide? Yes, but Trump, when he came back into office, this has been like the resistance liberals' worst fears actually coming true. Like,
I know, yeah.
In the first term, there was like, you know, he's Hitler, he's a Russian puppet.
He's a fascist.
Fascist. I mean, and this term, he's actually embodied it. And he has been a foreign puppet, not, of course, of Russia, but of Israel, as he continues to make clear. And on that note, we should congratulate President Trump for recently winning the first ever non-Israeli to win the Israel Prize.
Mazel tov.
This is something that Netanyahu announced when he visited Mar-a-Lago this past weekend, that Trump is the first ever non-Israeli to win the Israel Prize.
It's historic moment.
Yeah. And
for Trump and Israel, for both of them. Yeah.
Yes. And again, you know, if Democrats or at least Democratic leaders cared about foreign influence, foreign interference, Trump being under the sway of a foreign leader, this would be a great time to come out and call out Trump for doing Israel's bidding. But of course, they're not really doing that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised.
All right. Well, on that front, we're going to start with what is happening in Israel-Palestine. Just when you thought that Israel sadism couldn't get any worse, they've just announced that they're banning 37 aid groups from working inside Gaza. It begins on January 1st. And that's because Israel says these groups won't submit to new conditions that Israel is imposing. And one of those groups is named the Norwegian Refugee Council. And their spokesperson, Shayna Lowe, she was on Democracy Now! Today explaining some of the new conditions that these groups have to submit to under Israeli orders. And this is what she said.
Arbitrary and highly politicized, including saying that any organization that engages in quote unquote delegitimization of Israel would be subject to having their registration revoked or not issued. Now that term delegitimization is very vague. We don't know what it means, but what we understand it to mean is a way to target organizations like NRC, like Oxfam, like MSF, like our peers who speak out about what we're seeing, who talk about the violations we're seeing and call for accountability.
So Israel is asking these groups two things. One, to hand over names of their staffers. So Israel, which has killed hundreds of aid workers in Gaza, is now saying to all these aid groups, hey, give us the names and personal data of anyone who we haven't killed yet, basically.
What could possibly go wrong there? Yeah.
Right. And then they're also saying that everyone has to sign a pledge saying they will not engage in the quote unquote delegitimization of Israel, which means what? criticizing or just acknowledging the fact that Israel's carrying out a belligerent military occupation that has turned genocidal.
Right.
So they're basically telling people not to criticize Israel anymore.
Yeah, and just so people have a kind of a history and a sense of what Israel does and why Israel bans organizations. Just another example is that obviously we've seen them do this with UNRWA, and Joe Biden, speaking of democratic failures, capitulated and stopped funding UNRWA. Other countries stopped funding UNRWA, but then when it was determined that Israel was just making it up, that they found terrorists in UNRWA, at least those other countries reinstated their funding of UNRWA, not so for the United States. But another example of when Israel likes to defund organizations and charities and NGOs is, for instance, when they did that with an organization because, as Josh Paul, who resigned from the State Department, tells us, there was a credible allegation from a Palestinian teenager that he had been raped by Israeli interrogators. And when they brought that to Israel, the State Department brought that to the Israeli government. The Israeli government responded by banning that organization, the one who had brought that allegation to the State Department. So that gives you a sense of it. And, another reason, and Aaron, you pointed this out a lot when they were going after UNRWA, is that the reason they want to go after UNRWA is because UNRWA is so indispensable for Palestinians, especially in Gaza, but all over, and Palestinian refugees all over. And Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, also plays a key role. And they help with a third of all births in Gaza. And of course, preventing birth is one of the genocide criteria. And they provide 20% of hospital beds.
So Israel, I believe, is now the first country ever to ban Doctors Without Borders. I mean, if you look at the list of groups, like another group is, there's 37 names, so there's so many names. But it's like Danish Refugee Council, Handicap International. Like, you're going to ban a group called Handicap International, which is helping people who have been maimed and disabled by U.S.-made Israeli bombs. The level of evil of this government is just absolutely beyond comprehension. And what is the aim of all this? It's everything that Israel does now is designed around ethnic cleansing.
Yeah.
It's, conditions have to become so unlivable that even the people of Gaza, who've shown so much resilience in more than 2 years of genocide, will just have no choice but to leave. People are living in tents that can't even that aren't meant to be lived in for more than a few days, and are now being ravaged by winter storms, people being soaked in their, as they try to sleep. And on top of all that, on top of just being ravaged by the elements, Israel is also saying, we're not going to allow in 37 groups that help keep people alive. So everything is just designed to make life so miserable that either they move into one of these concentration camp areas controlled by Israel, or they leave Gaza.
Right.
That's basically the agenda.
It is really crazy. It's like a punchline. Hey, do you hear who Israel's banning today? Handicap International. Like, you just can't make it up. It's like, it's over the top. If you wrote a screenplay about this, you'd be like, you got to tone it down a little bit.
Yeah. Let's turn to Palestinian reporter Hani Mahmoud. He is a journalist with Al Jazeera. He's on the ground in Gaza. And this is him talking about the impact of this Israeli ban of 37 aid groups on the ground.
And just the material aid, beyond the aid that is provided by these organizations, there is a broader consequences here, visibility and accountability throughout the past 2 years. All these genocidal acts and kept unfolding. These international organizations help document conditions on the ground. They maintain connection between Gaza and the outside world. So now forcing them out, suspending their operations, means further isolating Palestinians from the outside world. So the suffering becomes easily to overlook here, and the connection between Gazans and the outside world becomes less and less, and that's the point that the Israeli military is after.
So he's exactly right. That's another aim of this, on top of furthering ethnic cleansing and further the misery of the Palestinian people in Gaza. It's just to cut people even more off from the outside world. Like, these groups on the ground can say, this is what's happening. They can document the atrocities. They can document the genocide. And so by banning them, Israel is cutting off a major, source of communication to the world about what Israel is doing in Gaza.
Yeah, and this is something Israel loves to do, and it's they can't. It's a testament to how Israel knows what it's doing is so unpalatable to the rest of the world, if not to Israelis. But they're just preventing the right of Palestinians, like literally, to be seen by the outside world and have their story told in a way that's unfiltered by the government, because they love doing propaganda and Hasbara. And anyone who doubts that can take a look at the difference between the Hebrew language and the English language comments from Netanyahu and much of the government, because they what they say in Hebrew is, of course, much more honest and disgusting than what they say in English. But this, what makes this so especially dangerous is the fact that there's so much censorship that we're seeing now on TikTok and X and Meta. So it's just a decreasing visibility of what's happening in Palestine. And we know that people think that there's a TikTok problem, as Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL described it.
All right. Well, how is the guy who was angling for the Nobel Peace Prize because he's such a peacemaker, including in his conception in Gaza, where he says he ended 3,000 years of conflict, how is he taking Israel's conduct these days, especially after Israel's not only banning aid groups, but blocking humanitarian aid, blocking shelters that could provide at least better shelter than these dilapidated tents that offer no protection for people in the face of these storms. And also, of course, most significantly, how is he responding to Israel killing hundreds of people under the so-called ceasefire that he brokered? Well, this is President Trump on his assessment of how Israel is behaving. He's speaking, of course, next to Benjamin Netanyahu during Netanyahu's recent visit to Mar-a-Lago.
Are you concerned that Israel is not moving quickly enough to phase 2 of the peace plan?
Well, I'm not concerned about anything that Israel's doing. I'm concerned about what other people are doing or maybe aren't doing. But I'm not concerned. They've lived up to the plan. They're strong. They're solid. And sometimes they don't understand when somebody violates something that you want to give them a second chance. Well, we'll give them a couple of second chances. But no, Israel's lived up to the plan 100%. Don't forget, we made the plan possible by taking out Iran. And speaking of Iran, I hope they're not trying to build up again, because if they are, we're going to have no choice but very quickly to eradicate that buildup. So I hope Iran is not trying to build up, as I've been reading that they're building up weapons and other things. And if they are, they're not using the sites that we obliterated, but they're using possibly different sites. We know exactly where they're going, what they're doing. And I hope they're not doing it because we don't want to waste the fuel on a B-2. It's a 37-hour trip both ways. I don't want to waste a lot of fuel.
Okay, so first of all, he has no problems at all with Israel killing hundreds of people since his so-called ceasefire went into effect. The problem, he says, is with other people who he doesn't name. I guess he's referring to Hamas. And then he says, and then he offers a new one, which I haven't heard before, that him bombing Iran helped pave the way for the ceasefire. Like, that's a new one. So faking diplomacy with Iran and then bombing it somehow led to a ceasefire in Gaza, when that actually entailed him, for the first time, which Joe Biden refused to do, using the leverage he has over Israel and saying that you have to accept this hostage deal. And the main impetus for that was Israel bombing Qatar. And because Qatar has financial interests involving Trump and his family, Trump finally got off his behind and said, all right, Israel, knock it off. So that's actually, if there's a foreign bombing that helped lead to the ceasefire in Gaza, it was Israel bombing Qatar, not the U.S. and Israel bombing Iran.
Apologies. There's construction outside of my room, so I'm going to mute myself while I see if I can move.
And then he goes and then, of course, threatens a new bombing on behalf of Israel. He talks joking about how we don't want to have to waste fuel. This is someone who previously said that he had obliterated Iran's nuclear program. And now he's saying they're restarting it. And he seems to say both, they're not doing it at the places where we obliterated, but we think they're doing it somewhere else, but we're not sure. But anyway, let's go threaten bombing them again, which is, of course, what Netanyahu wants. And that was the main reason why Netanyahu went to Mar-a-Lago, to get Trump's blessing for a new bombing run. And it looks like he got it. Okay, let's turn to Netanyahu himself. He sat down with Fox News during his trip to the U.S. And, when he met with Trump apparently brought up some concerns about the West Bank, that, maybe you shouldn't expand settlements so quickly. Maybe you should roll back the terrorism that Palestinians face every day from Israeli settlers and soldiers. And this is Netanyahu's response.
Settler violence in the West Bank continues to rise, and that does threaten some regional stability. How are you addressing that?
Well, first of all, I think it's much bloated. When they're talking about it, they're talking about a handful of kids. We actually located it. It's about 70 kids. They're not from the West Bank. They're actually teenagers who come from broken homes, and they do things like chopping the olive trees, and sometimes they try to burn a home. I can't accept that. That's vigilantism. I'm taking that out. But they claim they put a false symmetry between these teenagers and 1,000, actually over 1,000 terrorist attacks against the settlers, families, mothers who are driving on the roads there with their children. Boom, they're attacked, they're slain. So there's no symmetry. I'm putting a special effort to stop this vigilantism. I can't accept it. Even if it's not parallel, even if it's not symmetrical, I want peaceful coexistence between the Israelis and the Palestinians who live in Judea, Samaria, which is part of our ancestral homeland.
Okay, so this is a pretty incredible clip, because he's saying that basically the documented terror that Palestinians face every day from Israeli settlers, it's just a handful of Israeli kids. It's a bunch of confused kids from broken homes carrying this out, not grown adults who live in the West Bank illegally, hundreds of thousands of them. They come from places like Brooklyn. They steal Palestinian land. They burn down their olive groves. They shoot people. They take Jewish-only roads. And Netanyahu says they're not the problem. It's only just a handful of kids from broken homes, teenagers, which we're going to contain. And then he wants to make sure that, but don't you dare, though, equate whatever a handful of these kids do with what the Palestinians do to the Israeli settlers, as if, and he's like, there's no symmetry. So the Palestinians who sometimes resist Israeli occupation and terror, they're the bad guys here, not the settlers who steal their land and terrorize them, which, of course, he can't even characterize properly because he's calling them a bunch of kids from broken homes.
And not to mention the fact that they are totally enabled by soldiers. I mean, we've covered this, like Jasper Nathaniel has covered this in his reporting, but this couldn't happen, the settler violence, without being aided and embedded by the IDF, who they coordinate with.
100%. All right. Well, dare you have questions about this? The Israeli government has a response. This is from a recent interview. I don't know who this Israeli minister is, but this is how he responded to questions about Israel's deliberate starvation of the people of Gaza.
Question everybody in the world is asking, why is Israel starving the people of Gaza?
But again, as you said before, genocide, starving, ethnical cleansing, my God, everything is here. I say again, nonsense, lies. And honestly, sir, the same way you accuse me, I accuse you of being an anti-Semite, anti-Israeli journalist, and this is what you are. Please continue. This is what you are. You're an anti-Israeli journalist who comes here. If you dare to speak, because I was interviewed by so many medias, never ever, and the Google, I gave interviews to every channel you can imagine. Your questions and the way you run this interview. And you see, I listen to you because I know who I am, and I'm very proud of Israel. So I'll let you continue, ask anything you want.
Did you just call me an anti-Semite for asking questions based
because you don't
on
allow
UN reports, on Amnesty reports, based on
sympathy,
Human Rights Watch, UN experts, Israeli scholars?
That's what you do right now.
So now
that's
I'm
what you do.
an anti-Semite?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
For asking questions about your war?
If you accuse me.
I'm asking questions. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm asking you,
yes, sir. What you're doing in this interview is a disgrace, sir. You're a disgrace to the profession.
I mean, my favorite part about that is when he goes, "You're an anti-Semite. Please continue." Like, okay, thanks. I'm going to let you continue after I smear you and make this incredibly dangerous accusation and allegation against you. But it's just so disgusting. All they do is, how dare you? Shame on you. You're an anti-Semite. And it's just so I mean, I've said this before, and this is not the main priority, because the priority is that what's happening to Palestinians. But how do people think this isn't going to bite Jews in the ass, like when there actually is an anti-Semitic incident? And the truth is, they want this, Israeli and Israel supporters, because Zionism can't thrive without anti-Semitism. They need it to exist and justify their genocide of Palestinians.
I like the part where he's describing what the interviewer said, and he calls it ethnical cleansing.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And so I think it may be in the back of his mind, he thinks it's ethical to commit ethnic cleansing. So he's sort of like merging the two. It's ethnical cleansing. It's actually ethical to commit ethnic cleansing in Gaza because it's our land. We have the right to just kick the Palestinians out after decades of occupation and not genocide. It's ethnical.
Well, also, Israel is such a startup nation, as their defenders like to call it. So you got the tech in there.
That's right.
Technical, yeah.
All right. More on this topic. Jonathan Pollard, he is a traitor to the U.S. He was convicted of stealing U.S. nuclear secrets, passing them on to Israel. After a heavy lobbying campaign from the Israel lobby, he was released under Barack Obama, actually. Obama released Jonathan Pollard for some reason. And now Jonathan Pollard is in Israel. And he recently had a meeting with Mike Huckabee, U.S. ambassador to Israel, which even some U.S. officials were offended by, for like to have the top U.S. diplomat in Israel meet with a convicted U.S. traitor. But anyway, here he is. He's going to the Israeli parliament, and he has a goal in mind. He wants to formalize the ethnic cleansing of Gaza.
I've seen better polls, and they all indicate that a complete return to Gaza that's been cleared of its current Islamo-fascist population would probably be an acceptable solution as far as most Israelis are concerned. Our repossession.
By the way, Islamofascism reminds me of the term that was coined by an Israeli academic himself, Judeo-Nazism. Just something to keep in mind. Maybe some projection here.
Of our biblical land in Gaza will basically set the stage for our future. Why? Because it will show our enemies that if you fight us, we will not only defeat you decisively, but we will take back our land as well, permanently, to make sure that they're safe and secure going forward. And the only way that's going to take place is if we have a Jewish Gaza, 100% Jewish Gaza. As far as President Trump is concerned, look, the man likes winners. There's no question about it. It's time we start acting like one. Rather than asking permission to be one, we should simply act like one. And this is why I firmly believe that just as America has a policy of America first, we should have a policy of Israel Rishonah, Israel first.
Joining us.
When does Israel ask permission? Like, when is Israel being restrained by waiting to get permission from the United States? I think I missed that.
Yeah, I mean, Israel does whatever it wants. And listen, newsflash for Jonathan Pollard. I mean, he says that America has a policy of America first. Well, actually, America has a policy of Israel first. So don't worry. America already has the policy that you want. So things are looking very good if you're a Judeo-fascist like Jonathan Pollard.
Right.
To the point where even you'll get a friendly visit from the American ambassador.
Well, it's just an example of the shared values of Israel and the United States, which members of both political parties love to talk about, our shared values. And one of the shared values is Israel first.
All right. Well, last week, Israel became the first and only country in the world to formally recognize Somaliland, which is a breakaway region in northwest Somalia. Now, why would Israel, after spending its entire existence trying to prevent a Palestinian state, why would it go out of its way to be the only country in the world to recognize Somaliland? Well, guess what?
Wait, Aaron, isn't it because they really care about sovereignty and national determination and freedom of people?
Well, that's one option. That's one option. But Dan Diker, who is president of something called the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, he actually offers up a different explanation. To me, it's a lot more plausible. And here it is. He said it in a Twitter space.
Gaza is a very important issue today because the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas, is the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, is making a lot of trouble for a lot of people. I do know that our friends in Somaliland made a very generous offer privately, and in the last, I would say in the last months, I think it even reached the desk of the President of the United States, of their willingness to absorb or to create communities for hundreds of thousands, even beyond 1 million, up to 1.5 million Gazans who want to rebuild their lives in a safe place, just like Somaliland. This is Somaliland, in our understanding, is really the only country that stepped up to the plate to absorb Gazans and help them rebuild prosperous and honorable lives.
So there we go. Unless you think maybe Israel's, just trying to cares about sovereignty, self-determination. No, it's because Somaliland has agreed to absorb, according to this guy, over 1 million Palestinians after Israel ethnically cleanses them.
Ethnically, sorry, Aaron, ethnically cleanses them.
and Trump, when he hosted Netanyahu at Mar-a-Lago, he also basically said that, a lot of people in Gaza want to leave and they should have the option to leave. So it looks like Somaliland is Trump and Netanyahu's top choice.
Right, because again, Trump really supports the right of people to return, for the Palestinians' right of return to Somaliland.
Okay, let's turn to a domestic scandal. Trump and his supporters have been whipping up a frenzy over alleged fraud at daycare centers in Minnesota, which they say are primarily perpetrated by Somali immigrants. And what got them so excited was some videos by a YouTuber named Nick Shirley, who filmed himself going to some of these daycare centers and knocking on the door. Nobody was there. And therefore, he concluded that they're engaging in widespread fraud. Now, there are some documented fraud cases in Minnesota. I don't want to say it's a complete right-wing hoax. Like, there have been some convictions, and some members of the Somali community have been involved. But this, of course, is being blown way out of proportion, to the point where the Trump administration has now frozen all child care funding to Minnesota just because of this social media influencers' YouTube videos.
Which is really, I think, a very good metaphor, by the way, for the way that xenophobia works. I was going to say in the United States, but kind of internationally, where you have it used to justify cutting, slashing programs that affect people of all backgrounds, right? But you scapegoat a group that is foreign or quote unquote foreign, and then you use that to cut funding that affects everyone outside of that population. Not that it would be okay to target this population, but it's a kind of, you see this divide and conquer, pitting groups against each other at play. And what happens? You rev people up. You throw some red meat at racists. They get excited about going after the bad guys who are Somalian. And then these very racists also are going to suffer economically by losing the funding.
So CBS News recently, at the behest of its new editor-in-chief, Barry Weiss, who was installed there by Israel First oligarch David Ellison, CBS News recently spiked a story on the torture of Venezuelan immigrants who were deported to a prison in El Salvador and tortured there. And of course, Barry Weiss didn't want that to air because it looked badly on the Trump administration, which she is there to serve, especially because her owners want the Trump administration's approval for their bid to control Warner Brothers. So she spiked that story, and that was a big controversy. Well, amazingly, CBS News was able to do some journalism, actual journalism, on this Minnesota story, which Barry Weiss, I guess, didn't have the time to cancel. And it actually, to my surprise, made it to air. So here's their look at the story, which actually contains a lot of facts. And I'm surprised especially to see this under Barry Weiss. I think it slipped her oversight. So here it is.
Allegations of fraud at Minnesota child care centers. Federal officials say they are freezing payments across the state while they investigate those claims. The move comes after a YouTuber posted videos alleging empty daycare centers are receiving taxpayer money. CBS News has reviewed other video and state records that raise questions about the newest claims. Jonah Kaplan from CBS News Minnesota has covered this story since it began. Jonah, good morning.
Adriana, good morning. This is going to have a wide-ranging impact. There are more than 1,100 daycares, child care centers in Minnesota that are supported in part by the government to help keep it open, and about $185 million of that coming from the federal government. But HHS insisting this freeze is necessary, crediting that video that they say shows blatant and unrepentant rampant fraud in Minnesota and across the country.
Intrepid journalists have made shocking and credible allegations of extensive fraud in Minnesota's child care programs.
So just keep that in mind. He's calling this guy an intrepid journalist. Okay.
Well, actually, that's a really good point, Aaron, because I want to make sure that people are aware of how impressive this intrepid journalist is, and he really has the chops to back up those accolades. He started out, Aaron, not as an independent journalist, but as a prankster. So he created videos when he was 16. He filmed himself flying to New York from Utah, where he is from, with his friends without parental consent. He also made a video titled "I Tricked TikTokers into Auditioning for a Justin Bieber music video." And he is a Renaissance man, because in 2021, he said he was quitting YouTube because he was going to serve on a mission for the Church of Latter-day Saints, Mormons, in Chile, in Santiago, Chile. But 2 years later, I guess he converted enough Chileans into Mormons. He's back creating great content.
He also paid Latino day laborers $20 to go in front of the White House carrying signs saying, like, "I love Biden" and "Joe Biden for president," and trying to, like, gin up more xenophobia against migrant workers.
Well, his base must hate that, because he's employing migrant workers. He's employing the illegals.
Yeah. So anyway, this is the intrepid journalist that the Trump administration is citing to freeze all child care payments to Minnesota.
Yeah, you can't make that up. And this is why we need a leftist movement that, people will always say, "Oh, you can't talk about class or economics because people are racist." No, that's precisely one of the reasons you do have to talk about class. And someone who did a pretty good job at this is Bernie Sanders, right? And we've been very critical of his positions on Gaza. But, when you have people who actually make the point that you're being screwed over and you're being played by corporations or the government, pitting undocumented people against citizens or people who are from the United States originally, this is why they do it, because they distract you from the way that they're going after you economically. And Democrats don't want to make that point because they don't really want to offend the donor class. But it would be smart.
The widely circulated video from YouTube influencer Nick Shirley purportedly showed empty daycare centers in Minnesota that received millions in federal funds.
This is such biased reporting. They call this intrepid journalist a YouTube influencer. How can we take them seriously?
U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is now freezing payments to all child care centers in the state while they investigate those claims. HHS leaders outlining new steps to combat fraud, saying all payments across the country handled by the Administration for Children and Families will require a justification and a receipt or photo evidence before we send money to a state. They also want Governor Tim Walz to conduct a comprehensive audit of the state's child care centers. HHS is launching a fraud reporting system hotline, too.
Any dollar stolen by fraudsters is stolen from those children.
But
what about any dollar stolen by the Trump administration is stolen from non-Somali people, as well as Somalians? And also, they look like they're weird. Like, don't they look like some weird law? Wilson, throw it back up there. They look like they're
several of those daycares.
Rewind a little bit. They look like they're from they look like ambulance chaser lawyers, don't they?
And also, aren't they embarrassed that they're taking their cues from a right-wing social media influencer? Like, if you really are responsible for, cracking down on waste and fraud. Like, what does it say that you're taking your orders from a YouTuber? And and that you're so just malleable that you're going to just freeze all childcare payments because some guy on social media put out some videos, which, as we're going to see, are completely baseless, or at least, at the very minimum, massively overblown. Because CBS actually went to some of these daycare senators that Nick Shirley claimed to expose.
By fraudsters is stolen from those children.
But several of those daycare centers featured in Shirley's video are pushing back against those fraud claims.
This door is locked.
Like ABC Learning, which shared with us security camera footage showing parents dropping off children on the same day Shirley visited. In this video, you can see Shirley arriving at the center time-stamped around noon. Within the hour, this woman arrives at the door with a stroller. A few hours later, another larger family goes inside. Just yesterday.
Okay, so just because the door is locked, he thinks it's guilty of fraud. What if they don't just want to leave their daycare center where young children are vulnerable to random guys walking up, especially with cameras?
Yeah.
And what if maybe kids are dropped off at organized times?
Right.
Actually, for safety reasons. Does he ever consider that? It's just one possibility that this Intrepid journalist didn't factor in.
CBS Minnesota visited that same licensed facility where we found about a dozen kids. The daycare's owner says this latest move is political.
What did I do? I'm just a typical human being who wants to live and do the right thing. I have kids to feed.
Governor Tim Walz, the state's Democratic governor.
All right, so we get it. So basically, this is just unbelievable that the Trump administration decided to freeze childcare payments based on some overblown and misrepresented social media videos from a right-wing pundit who's previously done things like paying day laborers to go fake protest in front of the White House in support of Joe Biden. It's just
getting people to audition for Justin Bieber videos.
Yes, what a fitting way to end 2025. And there's more. But first, let's turn to Jessica Tarlov. She is a pundit, a liberal pundit who actually appears on Fox News, host of a show called The Five. And she actually made a really good point. While the Trump administration's melting down over alleged fraud in Minnesota, what is Trump's record when it comes to dealing with convicted fraudsters?
We'll say lastly that fraud should be stamped out everywhere. You should take it seriously. And I'm particularly upset, and I've said this now the third time, that people took COVID money, abused that while folks were dying, while kids weren't allowed to go to school. The country was completely in uproar, rightly so, people scared out of their minds. But Donald Trump and his administration has not taken fraud seriously. You have Philip Esform, who was the healthcare executive, speaking of healthcare, which is part of this, a nursing home mogul, I didn't even know you could be one, orchestrated the largest healthcare fraud scheme in U.S. history, $1.3 billion, commuted by Trump. David Gentile, the private equity guy, $1.6 billion, he defrauded people. Trump commuted his sentence. And then an oldie but a goodie, obviously Trump University, which had to pay $25 million settlement because it was a scam. Do not go out there and say this is all a liberal problem if you don't want to look under the hood of your own car.
So great point. Trump has pardoned and commuted the sentences of many documented fraudsters, including one of the people who she mentioned is this guy, Philip Esform. Let's take a look at this. And this is what Max Blumenthal points out about Philip Esform. Philip Esform was the king of Medicare fraud, but he was also an arch-Zionist Chabad cultist who relied on Alan Dershowitz and the lawyer who secured a pardon for Jared Kushner's father for clemency from Trump. If Minnesota Somalis were part of the Zionist power elite, you wouldn't be hearing about them at all right now. So, I mean, I just love it when one more Jewish person pops up in these in these stories just to underscore how embedded the Trump administration is with Zionism and how everywhere you look, Trump is implicated in some horrible scheme. And in this case, it happens to involve an ultra-Zionist.
Right.
Who is the king of all fraud. And these people, it's like for all people freaking out about like anti-Semitism, it's growing on the left. Maybe you should stop propping up people who like embody all the tropes of anti-Semitism.
Right. Yeah, that would be a good idea. Yeah. By the way, I don't mean to chastise anyone, but where are the likes? Less than half of you have liked this stream so far, and that is unacceptable. That's fraud. I think you guys are committing fraud by not liking the stream, because I know you like the stream. So you're withholding fraud. You're withholding like funds from us. So don't do it. Just hit like. That's the least you could do. I mean, look at these people we have to look at, including that Zionist fraudster. Also, what about Doge, and what about the military? You know, the Pentagon. They fail audit after audit. I don't really see Trump going after them for fraud.
No, in fact, he recently increased the Pentagon budget, which he's very proud of, to close to $1 trillion. All right. Well, listen, to be fair, let's take a look at some of the intrepid journalism that the Trump administration is relying on to freeze child care funding. This is Nick Shirley in action at one of these daycare centers that he thinks he exposed.
Where the kids are.
And who are you?
My name's Nick Shirley.
Nick Shirley.
And where are you? Which department?
Oh, we are from ourselves.
Yeah.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going. Look at that. Shut us down. Where are the children at? No children inside of this daycare center. And look at this daycare center right here.
Okay, so you think some random guy, like two guys
with a camera,
with cameras, going up to a child daycare center saying, "Where are the kids?" They're gonna let you in? Are you crazy? Are you nuts? Yeah. They should call the police.
Exactly. He's lucky that they didn't call the police. Yeah, they should shut you down. I mean, they're such snowflakes. These guys who make fun of grievance politics and being triggered. Now he wants like pity points and sympathy for the fact that they closed the door in his face, which is what you should do when a random person without kids is asking to see kids.
If, say, like a Somali influencer went to like a daycare center full of white kids and filmed himself doing that, trying to get in, Trump would like not only deport people like Somalis, he would bomb Somalia in retaliation. Like the racism it takes to accept this as not only journalism, but the basis for freezing child care funding is just off the charts. This story is unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable.
I like the way he expected her to open the door once he said, "We are from ourselves." oh, sir, sorry, you're from yourself? Please, by all means, come in. Let us show you the children.
Okay, one more Nick Shirley clip. Here is more of him explaining his journalistic methodology.
During their normal operating hours when you came to visit?
I came at 11 a.m., I believe, and I also came the following day later in the day. The point of it is not whether or not I came at the right time of their operation hours. The point is that blacked out doors, they can't give you any information. You call that number, no one answers. I wasn't trying to go inside, and there should be a way for somebody to actually be able to call that number and somebody be able to answer. These aren't real businesses.
But surely you don't think a daycare should just be unlocked. You shouldn't be able to just walk into a
There
daycare.
shouldn't be a reception.
No, every daycare is locked.
Their doors are locked.
And so, okay, you bring up a fair point. Then why can't they actually give me information how to enroll a...
There should be reception. Has he ever been to a daycare? There's not a reception area. Here, have a seat, sir. Yeah. Have some coffee. Here, go look at some magazines before we call you in.
Especially if they're serving maybe in like the ultra elite daycare centers, and I don't know, in like some really fancy neighborhood, maybe you can find a reception there. I doubt it, but you think a place in like a working class, middle class neighborhood, you can have a reception area where it's gonna like greet you, like, yeah, just wait around for the kids. It's just anyway, this story is I mean, we can laugh at it, but it's horrible because they're freezing childcare funding, and like, what's going to happen now with this freeze taking effect? Are childcare workers going to be lose their income at least for a while? I think they will, because who else is going to pay them?
Well, also, and you brought this up earlier, but just imagine for 1 second, like people. I mean, they talk about Pizzagate, they talk about groomers all the time. What's more groomerish than asking to see kids? Showing up and asking to see kids.
It's weird. It's very creepy. But according to the Trump administration, it's intrepid journalism worthy of freezing federal funding over. Okay, well, it's not only childcare funding that the Trump administration is freezing. They've also let expire subsidies that help people afford health insurance under Obamacare, which now expire at the end of today, starting January 1st. 22 million people will no longer receive the federal subsidies that help them afford health care. Well, what is the Republican plan to give people some help, some relief, some alternative to the subsidies that help them afford health insurance? Here is Republican Congress member Jason Smith.
To set up these fake Obamacare accounts, and 100% of their fake accounts were approved with fraudulent Social Security numbers. And guess what? 90% of those were still being subsidized this year.
That may all be true, sir, but what
It's actually not true, but anyway.
is the Republicans' plan to provide an alternative then for
The
these
Republic, yeah,
24 million
absolutely.
Americans?
The difference.
By the way, it's a pretty big deal when you have a Fox person, a Fox News host, pushing back on Republican. Like even this is a lie for even like this is a bridge too far even for a Fox News anchor.
The difference between the Republicans and the Democrats is the Democrats are focused on 7% of the population. Republicans are focused on creating more choice and lowering healthcare costs for every single American. There's 347 million of us. 164 million alone are on employer-sponsored healthcare, and their premiums have been going up like crazy. We need to bring in those health insurance companies. They need to answer before Congress and create more transparency of how these premiums gone up. Just the top three health insurance companies has made more than $1 trillion in revenues last year alone.
Okay, so his response is like these Democrats are focused on just 7% of the population, and he's referring to 22 million people, which is a lot of people.
Yeah.
Who are going to lose their subsidies. And yeah, sure, if you were going to say we're not just going to focus on the 7%, we're going to focus on 100% and make sure everybody can afford healthcare. Sure, but they're not actually going to do that because they have no plan. Now he says we're going to bring people in for more transparency, but like we don't need more transparency. We know that health insurance companies profit off of healthcare, and either you're going to take that on and help people or you're not. And their decision is we're going to let these meager subsidies for 22 million people expire with no plan to help everybody, on top of those who are losing their assistance.
Yeah, I mean maybe it's they're being equal opportunity and screwing people over.
That's what it is.
Net, yeah.
That's what it is. That's what it is. And there's only, I mean, how much longer can they get away with saying we're going to do it? Like they've been saying this for so long. It's coming. Our plan is coming. It's coming. We're working on it. We have concepts.
It's like the Messiah. That's what they should call their healthcare plan. Messiah healthcare. Waiting for him to come back.
All right. Well,
or to come back. Yeah.
Well, also on January 1st, something genuinely exciting is happening, which is Zohran Mamdani is being sworn in as the mayor of New York City. And one of the problems from Fox News' perspective with Zohran Mamdani is that he criticizes our messianic billionaires, the patron saints of our society, the ones who make everything work. So here is Fox News's Tomi Lahren reflecting on Zohran Mamdani and his failure to appreciate our noble billionaires.
When the clock strikes midnight tomorrow night, Zohran Mamdani will become the mayor of New York City, which means the world's ultimate center of business and finance will be run by a self-avowed socialist who does not believe billionaires should even exist. And of course, his friends Bernie Sanders and AOC agree. In fact, Bernie will even be swearing Zohran in. But have any of these billionaire haters ever stopped to think about what can be learned from successful people? Probably not. But now they get to spread their billionaire hatred day in and day out on the taxpayer dime. And all that demonizing has a real psychological effect. Psychotherapist Jonathan Alpert just wrote about this. And
Zohran is messing with people's heads with all this billionaire hate. You know,
They're going to have PTSD from it.
Yes. He's causing mass hysteria where people get the idea that maybe billionaires should not exist. Or at minimum, they should pay more taxes.
Exactly. It's not like a genocidal statement. He doesn't want to round them up or call billionaires. He's saying that you shouldn't be able to be a billionaire in this world. Yeah.
Well, let's hear from psychotherapist Jonathan Alpert. I love how like the few psychotherapists who Fox News will bring on are there to basically say that anyone who questions billionaires and thinks they should pay higher taxes, that they have some sort of mental problem. So, but let's give him his due. This is the insight from psychotherapist Jonathan Albert.
How does that go up in the brain?
Yeah, Tommy, it's interesting that there was once a time where people admired the rich and we aspired to be rich, but some people on the far left don't seem to be doing that. And I'd like to get back to a time where we do that. There's always a villain, and that's the problem with the far left. It seems like they always need.
Oh yes, there's the problem with the far left. There's always a villain, as opposed to the right, like Fox News, which never villainizes anybody. Like, say, for example, Somali immigrants who they're accusing of massive fraud and being responsible for all problems in this country. I mean, it's like, as a psychotherapist, it blows my mind. I understand if a Fox News host doesn't get the concept of projection, right? Okay, fine. They're not trained in mental health. But like, what did this guy learn in school? He must have learned about projection and how that's like a key psychological trait where you allege in others what in fact you have in yourself, and it probably deep down dislike about yourself.
It's like what is it? Every accusation is a confession.
Yes.
He strikes me more of a psychotherapist than a psychotherapist.
Absolutely. It's like an Arrested Development.
Exactly. The analypist.
The analypist, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They definitely need a space there between psycho and therapist.
An object to hate, a villain, and it's not really helping them. I would say it's creating mental health issues, whether it's high anxiety or depression or just hatred towards people around them. And they really need to try to move away from that and try to be inspired by people that are wealthy and learn how to be self-sufficient. And sure, of course, there are times when people do need government.
Wait a second. He's saying literally that they're unhealthy, they're facing anxiety, and what they need to do is to learn to be inspired by people who are wealthy. Can you imagine going to a therapist and being like, I'm anxious and I'm depressed? Well, have you considered becoming inspired by wealthy people?
Let me show you this photo of Elon Musk. Do you feel any better?
Yeah, exactly. What do you see when you look at that photo? And someone's like, he's a sociopath, greedy sociopath. Oh, we're going to have to commit you.
Yeah.
Sounds psychotic.
What if you're anxious and depressed because you've lost your job, or you can't afford groceries, or you can't afford health insurance? So the answer is to be inspired by Elon Musk, other oligarchs.
This guy should start conversion therapy for people who think that their anxiety is caused by, by economic woes, by social isolation, by alienation, and not by just not focusing enough on rich people. Okay, let's watch the rest of them.
Government help, but there should be government help sufficient. And sure, of course, there are times when people do need government help, but there should be a striving to get better and be self-sufficient.
Okay. Yeah.
It's unbelievable
that
this guy, I mean, he's kind of like he strikes me as kind of a Dr. Phil type.
I mean, I hope the Trump base sees these clips, right? And sees the contempt that elites have for working people,
right?
The point where they're willing to pathologize them and just dismiss everyone who might feel anxious about being economically unstable as having mental health issues, and daring to think that maybe billionaires should pay more in taxes or shouldn't exist. I mean, imagine that.
Right. Yeah. So insane.
All right. Well, let's do one more clip from Fox News. One theme of this year was whenever there was a problem that the Trump administration did not want to take responsibility for, they had one answer. I mean, talking about villainizing, of course, it was the fault of undocumented immigrants. It also was the fault of one man, Joe Biden. And Fox News has taken that talking point to such a length that they're still mad at Joe Biden for going on vacation. So this is Fox News.
You'll never believe where Joe Biden was spotted. Spoiler alert, he's on vacation.
So is Joe Biden not supposed to be on vacation? He hasn't been president for a year. I'm sorry to sound like such a lib. I mean,
I know, yeah.
if there's one theme of this year, or, it's a useful idiots. It's never been more of a lib show. I mean, I'm sorry to say it. It pains me to say it, but like we spent so much time making fun of corporate Democrats, and deservedly so. But this year, with Trump back in power and Republicans controlling both houses of Congress, really, we've had to give it up to the libs, and we have to emulate them, because what happens on Fox News is so ridiculous. Like, to the point where now Joe Biden is being mocked for going on vacation. If Trump had lost the presidency to Kamala Harris, and assuming he'd accepted losing, he wouldn't be on vacation?
Yeah, right. Where would he be? In the trenches? Like, I don't even know where they want Biden to be. I mean, the problem was when he was on vacation while being president, like mentally on vacation. But yeah, this is really ridiculous.
Yeah. All right. Well, to wrap the show, let's try to end on a positive note. Someone who I think most of everybody watching this would agree gave us hope, inspired us in 2025, and actually being serious, not being satirical here. And that's Francesca Albanese. She's the UN Special Rapporteur for the Palestinian territories. And she has been so brave, so principled in fulfilling her mandate, in calling out Israel's genocide, calling out the countries and corporations complicit in it. And for doing that, she's faced an unprecedented, I shouldn't say unprecedented. Actually, I should say unprecedented, because going after a UN Special Rapporteur in this way is unprecedented. The Trump administration did as they do to everyone who they try to destroy, whether it's a government, a country, a civilian population, or in this case, a UN expert. They put her under sanctions, which has seriously impacted her life. She can't travel using her own credit cards. She had a medical procedure in the US because that's where her health insurance is. And because of the Trump administration sanctions, she now has to pay out of pocket for that procedure. I mean, when you're under sanctions, it messes with your life so much. She can't draw on a bank. She can't open up a credit card. She can't book a hotel room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It messes with you so much. So here she is. Let's pay tribute to Francesca Albanese as the real person of the year.
Yeah.
What a hero. And what is the latest phase of this campaign against her? Zionist groups are trying to have her book, which has just gone on sale, canceled because of U.S. sanctions. So this is somebody named Mark Goldfeder. He is director of something called the National Jewish Advocacy Center, whatever that is. And look at what he just announced he's trying to do. And let's go to his, so her book is called When the World Sleeps. And let's go to his tweet, and you can zoom in on this. Today, we issued notice to Amazon and others about potential sanctions violations connected to Francesca Albanese's new book. Under federal law, property and interests of specially designated nationals are blocked and may not be transferred or paid out without specific authorization. So whatever this thing is called, the National Jewish Advocacy Center is advocating a book ban.
Yeah.
The Trump administration has put Francesca Albanese under sanctions.
Yeah, really despicable. Aaron, I don't know who's a bigger anti-Semite, Francesca Albanese or Ms. Rachel.
Well, yes, some anonymous account called Miss Rachel, I think one of the anti-Semites of the year, which is so, what can you say? And she's an anti-Semite. And the New York Post called her controversial.
Yeah.
And why is she controversial? Because she says, don't kill kids in Gaza and don't starve kids in Gaza. And that was 2025 when levels of derangement and sadism like that became so even more mainstream than they ever were before.
Yeah.
Which is a very scary thought.
Yeah. These people, these Zionists, they need therapy. They need psychotherapy. They need psychotherapy.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our Useful Idiots News Year's Mockin Eve. We wanted to get one more show in before the end of the year. We are, of course, very grateful to everyone who tunes in and supports us every week. Thank you for supporting Useful Idiots. If you're not a subscriber and you want to sign up, go to usefulidiotspodcast.com. This was a very look, what can you say about the year? it's very hard to feel hopeful looking at the state of the world. But at the very minimum, the least we can do is bear witness, try to laugh sometimes, because laughing helps. And that's what we try to do every week. And we're grateful to everyone who joins us to take part.
Yeah. Well, yes. And we will see you guys in 2026. We'll see you next year, right?
We will definitely see you next year, which is coming up very shortly, where we are in less than 10 hours. So stay tuned for more Useful Idiots. Thanks for joining us for New Year's Mockin Eve. We'll see you in 2026.
Bye, everyone.